it's a research study. So we are uncovering what known players and brands are doing, and we decided to give you a bit of a background on how we actually do this. And so basically, we use a bunch of SEO tools to figure out what is making these companies successful. So we look at it from the outside. These are not client of ours. These are, like I said, popular software companies. And then the SEO tools like Ahrefs or SEMrush allow us to figure out the keywords and rankings, their traffic estimates. We can use Wayback Machine for the history. We use the SEO tool Screaming Frog to perform content audits. And you will see that we can actually learn a lot of stuff from the outside, and we will share that with you today. We decided to pick 360 Learning for the webinar today because, one, I asked everyone on LinkedIn what company you're most interested in, and 360 Learning won. And then two, I don't know if that's because of their web series, Onboarding Joey, that came out in 2020, and then that I loved, and that made me a fan of hers and the content marketing of 360 Learning in general. Or two, we do a lot of SEO for companies in the space of HR tech, workforce planning, etc. And so when we do keyword research, we stumble across 360 Learning a lot. And so it made sense to see what made them so successful so quickly. My name is Viola. I run a digital marketing agency called Flow SEO, and I am excited to share today the stage with Rebecca. Hi, Rebecca. It's great to have you.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here too. I'm Rebecca. I've been working in digital advertising and SEO for 10 years now, and typically specialize with software companies. So looking at 360 Learning was a fun one to deep dive into how they're making their SEO strategy work. Yeah, so 360 Learning is a LMS focused on collaborative learning, so learning management system. They were founded in 2010, and looking over on this slide, the organic keywords by top position from Ahrefs, we see that they really did have really dramatic, incredible growth starting around late 2020. And it was interesting, they have a docu-series, Onboarding Joey, which was onboarding their head of content. So it provided some extra context for us that, they had big changes in their content team starting in 2020. And that is what helped, or what drove that growth. So 3x organic traffic in 2 years. So we're going to dive into how they did that, and if it's something that you can replicate for yourself.
And I think this is special, right? Someone who going through the roof in SEO so quickly, I think is really special circumstance. Yeah, final comment I wanted to say is I heard an interview with Joey in February. She did a podcast, and she actually said that her main organic distribution channel is SEO. So that 70% of her content is distributed and successful for SEO. And so it's clearly a big, big priority for them. So today, basically, we want to talk about a B2B marketing and SEO framework. We want to talk about 360 Learning's content performance. We're going to talk about pillar content. We're going to talk about how to prune, merge, and migrate content. And Rebecca has a great step-for-step process here for us. And then I'm going to talk about making meaningful competitive comparisons. As usual, please feel free to pop questions into the chat as we go along. No need to wait until the end. We're happy to answer questions at any point in time, and we're both looking at the chat as well. What I wanted to start with is kind of a B2B marketing and B2B SEO framework. What are we really trying to do here? And so I like this framework that Sandro Meyer talked about in the growth report. Can really, really recommend his newsletter. But the reality of selling, B2B tech is that only a very small percentage of your total addressable market is currently actively looking for the product that you have to offer. And so when we think about content, there is always, that challenge that comes with that there's only a fraction of the market that is currently hand raisers. And so when we talk about the people who are actively investigating a solution, then this is great demand that you can capture with PPC for transactional keywords, outbound marketing, and also like purchase intent transactional keywords. And then the second part of the equation is that the large majority of your addressable market, so probably 95%, are currently not looking to buy, but might be buying in the future. And so what you want to do there is you want to leverage content and content marketing to make sales easier in the future. And you do this by two things. It's like, one, you're trying to build mental availability so that when they're in the position of wanting to buy an LMS, you're the one that they think of. And two, you want to engineer more triggers to remind them that they need a learning management system. And so this is what kind of maps against this idea of bottom of funnel, middle of funnel, and top of funnel. And here are some examples. So you can capture demand by, let's say, high-end keywords for the people who are actively looking. And this is the people who are looking for benefits of LMS, LMS features, LMS implementation, social learning LMS, LMS types. You can see that they're aware, that they have a problem with transferring knowledge or with development. They know that an LMS is the solution to their problem, and they're doing a commercial investigation to see, what is the best provider and what is the best solution. And so you can capture by that demand by ranking for that set of very, very tight keywords. However, you can see in the third column, it says volume. That's the monthly search volume in the US, roughly. Take it with a grain of salt. It might not be exactly 30 or exactly 40, but what it's telling you is that the monthly search volume is kind of low. And so you definitely want to be there when people are ready, when people are raising their hand, you want to be found, but there's like a limit of option to kind of like scale your traffic and content through these keywords specifically. And so this is then also, I think, one of the reasons, even though 360 Learning has a big brand messaging around collaborative learning, is that they decided to focus on the keyword LMS as well, because we can see collaborative learning has, about 2,400 searches a month, whilst LMS has more than 110,000 keywords per month. So it would be a big missed opportunity if not trying to rank for where people's mind is at, even if then you want to educate them on why they want to rethink the way they use and work with an LMS. And then two is that point of like mental availability and triggers. So what is with all of the rest of the market that's currently not actively purchasing, but that could be purchasing downstream? And this is where your kind of like middle and top of funnel content around your use cases comes in really, really helpful. And this, as you can see here in column 3, their ranking position is where 360 Learning is really killing it by ranking for really keywords with a lot of searches, onboarding checklist, 3,100 searches, employee training, 4,600 searches. This is more middle and top of funnel, but this is in and around and related to their use cases. And this is how they make sure that they're staying top of mind. And so, yeah, I just want to give you that as we talk about content and content performance. We've done webinars in the past that were very, very focused on landing page SEO, ranking for transactional keywords. And so recommend you to check out some of this stuff. And today we want to talk about like content and content journeys and how that could look like. So here's kind of like what we know is that 360 Learning's blog exploded in the last 2 years. And so when I'm crawling the website today, I can see there's more than 400 English blog posts. There's about 130 French one and about 80 German ones, which is a lot. Considering that when they did their web series Onboarding Joey, they talked about her launching the blog, and that was like early to mid 2020. And so that is a lot of content for about 18 months, 2 years. So I tried to kind of like benchmark, see what is 360 Learning doing compared to their competitors. And so this chart needs some explaining, I think. One is like, how was this chart created? Like, we basically crawled all of the competitors, Talent LMS, Edumi, Continue, Docebo, players in the field going for similar keywords. We crawled them with the SEO tool Screaming Frog, and we exported the publishing date from early 2020 to date. That's the kind of like chart that you see on the bottom. We see each month, and then the columns show how many things were published that month. What's a bit tricky about this chart is that the way the different websites display publishing dates on their website, Talent LMS and Docebo have publishing dates both on their blog posts and their pages. And so this is why on average, the numbers are higher per month. Whilst, for example, Continue only has a publishing date on their blog post, and Edumi has like a mix of them both. And so this is why I say content volume is probably above average. If we assume that most of the content for 360Learning is from the last 2 years, they have around 400 English posts. And this is what some of the competitors have been publishing in the last 2 years. We can assume they probably did at least twice as much as many of the other companies out there. On a similar note is this chart is kind of comparing traffic over time. So again, we start on the left with 2020, and on the right, we start, with now, November 2022. And we can see basically the average monthly organic traffic. That is an estimate from the SEO tool Ahrefs. So Ahrefs obviously does not have access to the Google Analytics of these companies, but Ahrefs estimates the monthly organic traffic based on the number of keywords they're ranking for, the search volume of these keywords, and the ranking position, and the estimated click-through rate. And so this tells you a couple of things. So for example, Talent LMS on average has a lot more traffic than all of the other ones. But this is the point, is like, don't compare your beginning with someone else's end. So if you were to be Continue and you compare yourself to Talent LMS, you might be quite sad. But that's also because Talent LMS has been apparently having at SEO for a lot longer. And so that is something to consider if you're benchmarking or if you're planning your own strategy. It's like, where you are at in your SEO journey and where is someone else at in their SEO journey, and whom should you really be comparing yourself to? But then you can see 360Learning is the turquoise line kind of in the middle of the chart. And we can see it was kind of like flat-ish between November 2020 here until around July. And so this is always the unholy, the SEO takes time argument is they've been probably already putting out and publishing a lot of content, placing a bet on that SEO will pay off for them. And then it's actually exploded and taken off very, very quickly over the last year. And so there's just also that like lag time between you starting to publish and things starting to hit page one that I want you to be aware of. Final comment on that, the yellow line in the middle, Lessonly. Lessonly got bought by Seismic. And so that chart is basically Lessonly traffic before the acquisition and then Seismic traffic after. And they're probably, in terms of like volume, the most closely related to 360Learning. All right. When we talk about content and content performance, already, like I said, they're putting out a lot of blog posts. But that's actually not just it. They're actually putting out a lot of different content types. So on the chart on the right, again, this is a Screaming Frog wall. You can see how many blog posts do they have, how many pillar pages, how many ebooks, podcasts, and events in the different languages, English, French, and German. And you can see more than 400 English blog posts, but there's also more than 60 English pillar pages, more than 40 ebooks. And then in the very right column, you can see the estimated monthly traffic. And so the question is, if the ebooks, podcasts, events, if these are not really ranking, where do they fit? And I think the thinking here is that the blog posts and pillar pages really drive organic traffic. They really drive volume, and they drive then internally traffic into all these other content assets. So they drive through internal links, through CTAs, like the one shown on the slide. They drive traffic towards the ebooks, podcasts, and events, which are obviously much longer form and that educate and build trust. And that then obviously subsequently can also drive traffic on the case studies, use cases, and solution pages, which are much more conversion focused and much more focused on the actual product. And so that's the relationship there is you want keywords, you want rankings, you want SEO content, but you also want a destination that you can send people to. And often when you have a more mid or top of funnel mental availability, SEO content, you can't straight away, ask for a sign up or for a demo, because it's kind of like getting married on the first date. And so this is where you want to have kind of like more the sales enablement, trust building content that educates people further and make sure that, then they're ready to explore your product as well. Talking about SEO content and pillar pages and creating lots of pillar pages. Rebecca, I'll let you explain how pillar content works and how we deal with competitive keywords.
Yeah, thank you. So as Viola has showed us, the traffic that has for 360Learning really did come from the blog. So I wanted to dive in deeper on what was their blog strategy and how did they see such rapid growth. Part of it certainly is that volume of content that they were publishing. So both for blog content as well as those ebooks. But when we were diving into the site and researching some of those historical keywords, it really showed me that they had a cohesive strategy from the get-go. So they weren't just it didn't appear that they were just creating, a lot of different like blog topics within their industry, but really did create pillar content. So pillar content is really necessary to increase your topic authority. So what is pillar content? Some quick background there. Pillar content is long form articles that cover a top level broad topic or keywords. So for example, for 360Learning, one of the examples we'll look at is employee training. That long form content is going to be linking out to your cluster content. So you might have that top level content of employee training, and then you have types of employee training, methods of employee training, maybe different types of training methods, gamification, blended learning. So there's a lot that will start to fall into that clustered content, and we're linking back and forth. So we're providing search engines good context that we are an authority on this topic by having that long form article linking to additional resources. So linking to those cluster content, those subtopics like training methods, and then making sure we're also linking back so that our site is very connected. And so, tying this back into the initial B2B marketing framework, it's important to really look at, what are those key pillars you want to be focusing on, making sure that you do have this cohesive strategy as you launch content. And so for, if you are, say, for an LMS, what are people looking for, prior to actually having the need for an LMS software? And, in this instance, it could be looking at different types of training before they're even ready to build out any kind of educational resources for employees. And so going to the next slide and looking at examples, it was interesting. 360Learning had what we found looked like two different types of pillar content. So there's this example, which is what we typically see. It's 360Learning blog, very kind of common pillar content, ultimate guide, title, ultimate guide to employee training program. And, we saw this beginning to rank in late 2020 from that on page 1 in that Ahrefs graph below. So a good indicator to us that, this was actually an early piece of content that they're launching on the new blog. And follows those best practices for pillar content. It's very long form. That word count screenshot you see there is from Surfer SEO, and we see that it has over 3,000 words. It's the longest ranking page in that top 5. And they did get a really competitive term, like got ranking for competitive terms, employee training. But then looking at the next example, they've actually, started, it seems, to really build on that success of having strong pillar contents and creating these new designated hubs. And we've seen growing trend of more companies and websites doing this. Implementing really long pillar content just directly on your blog is a great option when you have limited resources. Perhaps you need to build a new template, so you're just creating a blog. But if you have the opportunity to do this, we love these pillar designs. So what it looks like, if you were to go to 360learning.com guide learning theories, this is this particular one, the overall pillar topic is learning theories, and then we have sub theories below that. So say like adult learning theory, cognitive learning, and they're all following that same URL path. You have a left-hand navigation to navigate to each of those. And some pros to this as a method of building out your pillar content is, it's easy analytics. So we can actually see where we're starting to build a lot of that topic authority. We can just go ahead and look at our traffic for learning theories instead of blog, where, we might not be able to easily understand how much is our traffic increasing in the employee training space. But having it on that dedicated URL is strong. And it's just a really great user experience, I think, of instead of having a long form article that you're scrolling through and then see that additional link. We have this great kind of hub navigation, and looking at Ahrefs over in this bottom corner, it is working for them. So they're relatively new and they're seeing very, very dramatic growth for traffic. So this was just filtering just all guides, these type of pillar content. And I wanted to highlight too, the reason I also think this is, great form of using guides, using kind of very long form pillar content, is each content cluster still has its own URLs. So it's not just one long guide on learning theories, which I think is important, because you're not going to rank the same page, the same URL for learning theories and every other content cluster. We do still want them to have a dedicated page and URL. So that's something this layout and template is doing really well. And so, yeah,
I'm wondering,
I guess next.
I can try to let me see. I'll try to open it so we can have a quick look at it, right? But yeah, basically, right, it's like the kind of like intro, which already that is long and neat and nice with the kind of like load bar here on the top, has a nice CTA on the side, and then you can basically click into the different, let's say, chapters in it. And I think it's really neatly done.
It is really well done. I will say, and I don't know what you think, Viola, but it wouldn't work for everyone and for every pillar, because it does have to have that really strong, content like structure and flow, where this is very cohesive topic, where you might have a broader pillar where it's hard to actually make it into a single logical hub that actually flows well. Yeah. But it works really well for this topic and the topics they have covered.
I agree. Yeah, I think it depends. Like it's like more an art than a science. I think choosing the size of such a hub or pillar, right? Like learning theory, like you have enough topics and theoretical models that are clearly distinct, so they lend themselves to a unique page. And at the same time, if you have something like employee engagement, right, it might be so huge that the hub, then has like 300 entries, which is then we see people more slapping it all into a glossary, and we've talked about that before. And then at the same time, if you make it too targeted and too focused, it might not be worthwhile building out such a huge content with so many chapters, because the topic is narrow enough. And so striking that balance, I think they've done extremely well.
Yes, I agree. And so, looking at these hubs and, some competitive keywords, we wanted to just kind of explore some thoughts around keyword difficulty and how you should evaluate it. What should you be looking at as you're choosing some of these initial topics and launching a new blog? So looking at next slide, often I'll hear the advice and kind of mindset of like, you should, if you're launching a new blog, new section of your site, or just a new site, start with those easier long tail keywords, those low difficulty keywords. And I wanted to push back on that. I don't think it's one or the other, but going to the next slide, I think it's, choose your pillars and do actually have that blend of difficult keywords. So, don't let, for example, so we pulled here all the rankings 360Learning does have for employee training. We saw that they created that hub page, pretty early on in that, or that pillar content early on in their new blog launch, and it did start seeing results early. And I think it's important to have that good reflection of important to have a good blend of difficulty. We want to have some wins. We want to start seeing momentum sooner than later, but don't, we do often your pillar content is going to be pretty competitive keyword. If you're in like the email marketing space, usually competitive, but going ahead and building out that pillar content, going for that keyword, and it'll take time, but better to get started sooner than later. And even if you're not yet ranking for that term, very top level term, we're building that topic authority, we're providing structure on the site. So that, that's my thoughts of definitely have that blend. Don't get scared of those really high keyword difficulty keywords. Start implementing them now with the mix, and focus on those pillars that are going to be the most impactful for your business instead of just what might be easier, immediate traffic.
Yeah. And just to add to that, two things just came to my mind. It's like, one is just keep in mind that, Google is an algorithm. And so it basically has a mathematical model for language. And so with some of these like high difficulty keywords, parent topics, you're providing the structure, this is the parent topic, this is how we break it down into subtopics and kind of like increase that understanding for Google. And also, just in terms of like logic for the user, right? Like people might be coming in for a very specific long tail keyword that you found early, but it just makes sense that they would have kind of like learn more in our ultimate guide about employee training, right? So it's kind of like a necessary kind of like step also in the flow of the user through the content, is that they read this, even if it's not, like ranking tomorrow.
Yeah. Cool. So next I did want to touch on an opportunity. So I know we're decoding the SEO success, and 360Learning has done a lot right and very well with their, when they launched this new blog and creating strategy, creating that pillar content. But it was interesting when we were diving into their website, we did see what I thought was a like clear opportunity, and something we see a lot of sites, have to look at of, we're migrating content, we're building a new blog, maybe you're on a subdomain per blog, and that's exactly what it was. So their blog wasn't entirely new. It looks like they did have an old blog that is still live and still indexed. It's on the subdomain blog.360learning, and the main page does actually redirect to the new blog, but the individual templates are live. And it is a fairly significant amount of content, a lot of more French content. It's only about 40, when we crawled the site, 40 English and about 200 in French on the old blog. And they're just not receiving traffic according to Ahrefs. So I thought it was an interesting decision to leave the old blog, instead of migrating all content or cleaning it up. And, a lot of, common concerns is if you change the URL, are you going to lose your traffic? We've seen like really successful migrations where we don't see, really any traffic variations, as long as you're setting up those redirects correctly. So just looking down on the next slide, so this is just the new blog performance. So the one that we've really been talking about that kicked off in 2020. We see the number of top chart is organic pages. So pages that are actually appearing in the top in search results. So we can see they were really steadily creating new content, and then top page 1 keywords is the second chart, and seeing that grow really consistently as well. And then the old blog, on the other hand, so the next slide, it's a little bit definitely more sporadic. So certainly the new blog was their chance where they created like a really good strategy or consistently posting. But we see in 2020, they just late 2020 when that new blog went live, those positions dropped quickly. So what would so the question is, what should you do? You have this old content. At that time, I would have actually recommended migrating everything to the new blog or cleaning it up, or at least of cleaning that up during the migration process, identifying what content we want to repurpose and reuse on the new blog, or what needs to just be completely removed. But now, 2 years later, what should you do? Next slide. It's scary to think about deleting all the content that you've worked hard to create, but should you remove old content? To me, that's an absolute yes. Especially if it's unhelpful, outdated. We're not going to remove your top 10 blog articles. They're not ones that are generating traffic, but all of those articles that are not generating traffic are unhelpful, maybe repeating a topic that you've covered elsewhere on your site. You should look at removing. So, this is even from the, you might be thinking like, why remove it? It's not getting traffic anyway. But having a really, kind of clean, helpful site is going to help the rest of your content. So this is from screenshot quote from the helpful content update in August of this year. Google on sites determined to have relatively high amounts of unhelpful content overall are less likely to perform well in search. So for this reason, removing unhelpful content could help the rankings of your other content. So that's why we want to go ahead and get rid of it. So how do we do these content cleanups? I think that's in the next slide. Yeah. So, there are two things kind of going on here. So 360Learning, this would be more of a kind of content cleanup plus migration. But we often just do cleanups of, as part of our content audits and mapping what, should be removed. So 4 steps to successful content cleanup: creating a keyword map. So map your top keywords to each page that will be removed. If it is a maybe like product or feature update and doesn't have a target keyword, I'll still map out that, that is the intention and topic of this article. But we'll dive into Search Console using tools like Ahrefs as well to understand what is it currently ranking for, if anything, does it have traffic, and is that still a keyword and topic that's relevant? And kind of, especially about that like relevancy. A note from the last slide I didn't mention, but if you are, a reason to delete content is often we'll see perhaps, or, maybe in 2012, you had a content writer that had a lot of like keyword stuffing. And so you have some content that's just like really following some old best practices. That's the stuff to be looking for to remove. Or if you didn't really have your pillars defined yet, like if you were maybe an HR tool that was initially focused on onboarding, but you pivoted to a new area. We don't want to have a bunch of topics that are no longer relevant to our topics. So that's the kind of stuff to remove. So that's the point with like the keyword and topic of, maybe do rank a little bit for it, or you have maybe some potential there. But if it's not relevant, we want to make sure that we're building our topic authority and not writing about old articles that are covering 20 different topics. So we're mapping our keywords as step 1. Step 2, action items. So what to do with it. In this 360 learning case, the goal is to be migrating everything from that old blog subdomain to the new blog. So I would be just flat deleting / unpublishing any unrelated topics to our core pillars, topics that might have zero traffic or no longer relevant. And then those that might have some potential, we're redirecting it to the new blog, to a similar article. And if there's relevant information, we're merging that content. For content cleanups that don't involve a migration, other two options is no indexing. So, these could be articles that weren't necessarily intended for search. So perhaps mentioning like new features or an award that you don't need. And then lastly, of course, we'll find content that is still very relevant. It might just may not be ranking and needs to be updated. So we'll keep it and update it. So we're mapping our action items, and then in step 3, in the next slide, it is implementing. So go ahead now, just implement and make sure you do a QA. Crawl the site again once you've made all these changes, especially if it's a large site where you might be cleaning up hundreds of articles. Those ones that we deleted, you might be thinking that's going to turn into a 404. We do want to go ahead and unpublish it, but we want to make sure we're not deleting or linking to that deleted content. So we don't want to create a bad user experience if you have an internal link to a 404. So we are going to go through and fix all of that as well. But yeah, certainly something to be looking out for, and I think more important than ever. So this is an example of what it could look like in practice of evaluating some examples from that blog subdomain, the old blog for 360 Learning. We'd add in real traffic numbers, and I highlighted games for sales training. That might be something that's still really relevant. Could be merged into a broader sales training article or topic, but other ones like email subject lines for sales or sales statistics, like that might be something that was created in the past because maybe sales was an area of focus or sales training, but we want to go ahead and remove it now. And so we'd be mapping those keywords and listing out those action items based off of this analysis to clean up your content.
Nice. Yeah, and just a quick comment is like, one thing is also like, obviously a lot of talk right now has been around kind of like, what is the economic climate? What are we doing? Where are we putting our marketing budget? And so if people are worried about putting forward a huge budget towards new content for 2023, like cleaning up the stuff that you have is really a rising tide for your SEO focused articles. And so I bet you that if your startup has been around for 5 years, 8 years, 10 years, you have a bunch of old product release notes, Christmas parties, short articles, outdated articles, old messaging, etc. And so if you're looking for an initiative that can kind of like amplify your SEO efforts and amplify the content that you're already creating, look at the stuff to get rid of and reorganizing it, migrating, redirecting, choosing appropriate categories is a really, really strong opportunity to do right now, to make more out of the stuff that you already have. Nice. All right. Any closing remarks on this? I know we have a few people in the chat that also do kind of like content strategy. So I think, Brianna, you mentioned your work in content. Stephanie, Helene, if there's any comments, feedback, thoughts that you want to add, obviously feel free to let us know about that. What I kind of want to close us off with as a food for thought is this idea of, they did this, right? So 360 Learning put out so much content in 2 years. Is that something that you can replicate for yourself? What does it take? What do you need to think about when wanting to do something like that? And so I do kind of like want to close the loop a little bit on talking about competitors and making meaningful comparisons, because I think it's very easy to be kind of like envious of their, content and SEO success. But then also, like I said, don't compare your beginning to someone else's end. Like, what can realistically done and what are like realistically the circumstances that make it harder or easier for a startup to have success with SEO. And so the first thing I want to put to your mind is that when you think about the competitive landscape and the keywords that you want to rank for, there's basically two types of competitors going after the same keywords as you. So for example, the blue bubble is 360Learning and the keywords it's ranking for, and it obviously has a big overlap with the green bubble, which is talent LMS. And then also with the orange bubble, which is Continue, which all of them are kind of like in the LMS learning system space. And they have similar products. It makes sense that, a competitor would be potentially considering them. But just be aware that the people going after your keywords are not just your product competitors. There is basically, there's other solutions for a similar ICP or use case that might be going after your keywords. There is industry publications, review sites. I'm sure you're seeing G2, Capterra, and Trust Radius everywhere. And just be aware that the competitive landscape of SEO is a bit broader than, just your product competitors. And then even within product competitors, I think useful SEO comparisons come from understanding the context in which these competitors operate. And so here's a screenshot on the right side with the top 10 keywords in the US. So there's Docebo, 360Learning, Talent LMS, Continue, and Edumi, which I kind of put because they're like kind of in a similar kind of like frontline space. And so you can see 360Learning is doing super well compared to these. Only Talent LMS is longer. And I want to look a little bit more at the circumstances of these competitors. Like obviously one thing is to consider some of these companies are much older than others. Some of them have a significantly higher amount of funding and hence employees and marketing employees. And I think that number of team members in marketing and or budget and marketing is a big indicator of whether or not you can pull off an SEO success. A big consideration is the product and how it's being sold, and then just some general SEO criteria. So I want to dive into that. And I basically have mapped this number of top 10 keywords against different other factors. And so the first one here is that 360Learning has a get started kind of like self-serve CTA, which compared to the other ones, it's the only one who does it like that. Talent LMS has like a double CTA between get started and demo, but all the other ones focus on demo. And you can also see that 360Learning and Talent LMS are the two that are pushing SEO the most and have the most keywords ranking. And one of the reasons might be is that self-serve and sales-led have a very different buying journey, in the sense that if you have a lower priced self-serve product, you might have a much higher need for a high volume organic funnel because you can't afford the same high customer acquisition costs that maybe someone going after an enterprise deal can afford. And so especially a sales-led motion enterprise, it's much more about targeting. You have a much higher buying, longer buying circle. It's a different intent. It's a higher intent. And so it might make sense that the potentially lower priced self-serve options prioritize SEO more than some of the sales-led enterprise products. And so when you compare yourself, also think about, is the product, the website I'm comparing myself to, going after a similar segment in the market. And that might change the emphasis they put on SEO or not. The other thing I want to talk about is just size of website. Bigger is better in SEO most of the time. And what I mean by that is that if you have a really, really tiny website, there's just a lower opportunity to rank for different things. So typically, if you have a larger website, if you have more content, you're covering more topics, you have more unique content, and thus you have more keyword potential. bigger is better is correct, like with a few caveats. And these caveats are a clean site structure, high topical relevance, and long form content. And you can see in the chart, if we can kind of go from left to right, in green is always how many top 10 keywords. And then in turquoise is index pages. And generally speaking, it seems to be that the website that have more index pages also rank more. The only difference here is Docebo. They seem to have a lot of pages and not that many rankings. But this is a false assumption because they actually have a big multi-language approach. And so the US actually only gets about 25% of their traffic, and they're huge in Italy, India, Canada, Mexico, Philippines, etc. And so this chart here, the little green bar for Docebo only shows their top 10 keywords in the US, but they actually have a lot of top 10 keywords in a lot of other countries. And so broadly speaking, larger website, more content has the opportunity to rank for more keywords if done well. The other thing I wanted to talk about is often is like when we talk about when is the right times to start SEO, can I rank with SEO realistically as a startup, is this idea of having traction with backlinks and domain authority. Now, the thing is the median domain rating of these 5 companies is 76, which is exactly the domain rating of 360Learning. And still they rank for very different amounts of keywords. And so I had a second look at referring domains. That's kind of like the orange line in the chart. And so the thing is, it seems to be that when a website has more referring domains pointing to it, it also seems to rank for more top 10 keywords. But this is a bit of like a chicken and egg problem. It's like, do these websites basically have more backlinks because they're prioritizing SEO and hence this is why they have more top 10 keywords? Or do they have so much attention through brand and PR and such a high domain rating and so many links that this is why their content gets amplified more and they have more top performing keywords? My assumption it's a combination of both, is that most of these sites have grown their general domain authority in the high 70s through PR, through branding. And then basically, I tend to think that the companies who do really well with SEO probably also focus on link building to their SEO pages and thus probably have a bit more of referring domains. But when you look at these charts, correlation is not causation. And I think both of which could be the cause for the other one here. So all that to say is when you think about, can I achieve what 360Learning has achieved? Make sure you're making a meaningful comparison in the sense that, you know, do I have the budget and willingness to grow my marketing team in the way that they have potentially? Where is my marketing team size and budget at in general compared to competitors? And then where's my site at? How much pages do I already have? How much content do I already have? How many backlinks do I have? Am I in a good condition to kick off SEO? And then thirdly, self-serve versus sales-led. Is SEO, you know, the channel that's really going to move the needle for us in terms of the type of leads that we want to generate and that we need to which customer acquisition cost? With that, that's kind of like what we had prepared. We have talked about the B2B Marketing Framework, which is the challenge that only a small fraction of your market is actively looking for your solution right now and capturing that with high intent keywords, in this case, like LMS related stuff. And that about 95% of your market is currently not actively searching. And then how do you serve content to them and how does that flow look like? What type of content are you producing, from blogs and pillar pages to other content assets? We talked about what type of like pillar content to create and what's the framework for that. And then we talked about the importance of pruning, merging, and migrating content. And I saw a few comments here in the chat that I like. Mary Ellen, hello to you. She said, kind of like this idea with like content pruning. She says, this is often a change management exercise as much as a tactical exercise. I find that people struggle to let go of the idea of blogging about their company news. And that's a fair point. I think with many things, SEO, like things are easier said than done. We're just like, do a pillar page, publish 40 blog posts a month. And obviously, like that needs a sort of like organizational commitment and alignment and willingness, you know, to execute a project like this. And I think part of the work as the head of content or as the SEO consultant is getting that buy-in and getting that alignment. And I think this is where having meaningful competitive comparisons can help drive the point home. And then the second thing is like blogging about company news and all that stuff. Obviously, not every article that you write needs to be an SEO article. You know, there's many other reasons to blog, whether it's to build trust, whether it's for conversion, whether it's to educate. That being said, if you do care SEO and if you do think that's a meaningful channel for you, you do need to have a sufficient amount of SEO content, and that might need a change on how you plan your content and how you prioritize SEO in your content process. And so I wanted to say that, and then also shout out to Helene. She says, content cleanup can feel daunting, but it makes your life easier moving forward. It cleans up the reports, it streamlines your work, so it's worth all around it. You don't want people to stumble across these awkward pages anyway. And I think that's a fair point. I think, Rebecca, you're also making that experience. Like if you have hundreds and hundreds of pages, that's a huge project to manage and update as well. And there's a lot of, I'll let you speak to that, like efficiencies and having a smaller amount of content to work with.
Yeah, I mean, and we talked about too, you know, kind of two things going on with that. You know, having more content does give us more topic coverage and like keyword potential, but if it's not doing anything for you, you know, we want to get rid of, we do want to clean it up. But I like Helene's comment too. You don't want people to stumble around those awkward pages anyway. You know, if you're really trying to build your like authority and trustworthiness, and like be a thought leadership in the space, I mean, I think that's just another reason to get rid of older content too. There's some brand perception associated with it as well. So a lot of benefits beyond just improving your overall organic traffic for your other content. Yeah,
and just to address that seeming contradiction again is more content on more pages have more ranking potential, but only if it's structured, it's relevant, and it's well done. And so we're not talking about getting rid of your beautiful long form, well-designed pages. It's really the old, the thin, the outdated stuff that doesn't get any engagement that is actually holding your beautiful, well-done pages back. And so this is why probably every few years or so, at least, you want to think about pruning some of this stuff. And then, interesting. So there's also a question from Morten. He says, I work in a very niche industry. Most keywords have no search data, according to SEMrush. If we were to do some major pillar content, what would be a great way to get backlinks to improve the site authority and get our content out there? I feel like this is two questions, which is just like, what do I do about my content plan in general? If there's not that much keywords in SEMrush or in Ahrefs, which that can be true if you're very niche, or if you're, you know, a new solution that people typically haven't heard of yet and you need to educate the market. And so I have a couple of thoughts. It's like, one, use more than one SEO tool. You will notice that SEMrush, Ahrefs, Google Keyword Planner don't have the exact same keyword database. And so I think if you're very niche, it's worthwhile looking into several SEO tools to kind of like see what's happening. And then two, kind of like similar to what we talked with the high difficulty pillar content for 360Learning, what are some of the core concepts that you need your customer to understand in order to follow the rest of your content and your products? And then that might worthwhile pillar content, you know, despite quote unquote no search volume.
And I was going to chime in too, of like, I think a good question too is, is pillar content even right for every business? And I think in some instances, if you're very, very niche, I don't know that, like not knowing the specific industry, but, the example would be, if your niche is just skiing, your entire site is already kind of like building up that pillar, that authority around a single topic, versus if your business is snow sports, then you might have a pillar on skiing, cross country, snowboarding. But if you already are like very, very niched in, pillar, maybe you disagree, but I think pillar content isn't necessarily, you're not trying to build that topic authority for multiple topics and pillars. You already are focused and should be focused on that single niche, and everything you create is falling into that topic to build authority.
I like that. And then also want to read out Mary Ellen's content is like, one, are you looking at the problem too narrowly, or is this a sign that you don't have a market yet and SEO might not be where you focus? And so I just want to drive that point home. I think if you don't have product market fit yet, if you don't have a go-to-market strategy, maybe SEO is not, if that's the only marketing activity that you're focusing on, I don't think it's necessarily the wisest choice. And so I think if you have proven product market fit, you can replicate the SEO strategies despite the lack of data and the keyword tools. And it's just a matter of the market maturing and more of these keywords appearing in them. If you are so niche and you do not have product market fit or a go-to-market strategy yet, I would tend to agree that SEO is maybe not the best place to start. This is maybe when you want to go into outreach activities or PPC or business development, field marketing, etc., to basically find product market fit, define your ICP. And then when you have that, this is when you want to pick up and scale up SEO and content. I think SEO is not necessarily a great strategy to test and prove product market fit. It's more a strategy to scale up once you have that. All right, I think we are on time. I did quickly want to put up our email addresses. We love talking SEO. We do SEO all day long. And Freddie from 360Learning here, your analysis is very accurate. I'm very glad and honored that you're here and this is what you're reflecting back. It was a true pleasure. And it's actually been fun to see that some of the 360Learning folks have engaged with our LinkedIn content on this, and I'm glad to see you here. And thank you for the shout out. But yeah, everyone who's here in the webinar today, these are our email addresses. This is us responding, not some sort of bot. So feel free to reach out with any questions that you might have, tonight or tomorrow and next week about SEO. We love chatting about this. And then also we'll obviously email out the replay after if you want to look at some of the slides in more detail. And so thank you, everyone. It was a pleasure. Have a beautiful day and afternoon.
Thank you.